So I think just like the lack of knowledge that I had of like how these changes were going to be affecting, my body was a big part of that. But at this time, I felt like all my symptoms, so I obviously was living in LA and all my symptoms kind of hit me at once.
And what were those symptoms?
I had gained 30 pounds in 3 months, so gained weight pretty quick. My hair was pretty much falling out. I hadn't had a period in 3 months, but it took me 3 months to even realize, like, oh my gosh, I haven't had a period. I was so busy that I kind of put my health on the back burner. I just didn't really make it a priority. I had hormonal acne all along my jawline. Fatigue 24/7. I felt like my body was like moving in slow motion. Like it took me so much energy to do the smallest tasks. And I was just really sad. Like I wasn't myself. I'm a very bubbly, like fun-loving person. And like that energy just wasn't there. And I think for me, that was like, I know that these symptoms had gradually come over time, and I just I wasn't paying attention and I wish that I would have been. And so it kind of felt like they all hit me at once.
Gracie Norton is a digital entrepreneur, content creator, and author who gained notoriety on TikTok by sharing a raw and unfiltered look at her life and the transformation she went through by prioritizing her health and wellness. She's the host of the Wellness Her Way podcast, where she explores what it means to have an abundance in wellness in all aspects of our lives.
Gracie joins the show today to discuss how she healed from symptoms associated with PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome. Thanks for tuning in to SHEMD.
On today's podcast, we're so lucky that we get to have Gracie Norton. Gracie also has her own podcast called Wellness Her Way, and you have PCOS.
Yes.
And what I'm really excited to learn about today was that your PCOS journey looks a little bit different in that you decided to heal it naturally. And we
Yes.
want to know what that is like, what you did. We want to get tips from you and how you did that. But I think first of all, I just want to start off by how did you find out that you had PCOS? Can you start with that whole
of course.
experience?
First of all, thank you guys so much for having me. I've listened to both of your stories and I just feel so lucky to be with two inspiring women. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And at the time, I didn't realize this, but when I was in college, I started experiencing some symptoms. And, I wish there was a course that women took earlier on that taught you all the ways that stress or, the changes in your sleep or just all these lifestyle changes that you go through in your early 20s are going to affect your health. We're not taught about these things. And so when I was in college, I started experiencing extreme bloat and a lot of fatigue. And then I was in one of my classes and it was the craziest thing. I just ran out into the hallway. It just doubled over in pain. And what I didn't know at the time was it was an ovarian cyst that ruptured. And so, it was just the worst pain I'd been in my entire life. And so I called my mom and I was like, hey, there's something seriously wrong. And I should have done something about it, but I didn't. There was one more that ruptured. And I said, okay, if this happens again, I'm going to go and see a doctor. Clearly something's off. But at this time, my period was still regular. So those cysts ruptured. I didn't really do anything about it. And then my lifestyle drastically changed again when I moved to LA. And at this time, I was working for a YouTube channel. Again, just schedule totally changed, was going to bed at 3 a.m., eating at different times every single day. Mm-hmm. And these changes really do have such a big impact on women's health. And I was working with all men and their bodies just operate different. They have a circadian rhythm. We have circadian and infradian. And so I think just the lack of knowledge that I had of how these changes were going to be affecting, my body was a big part of that. But at this time, I felt like all my symptoms, so I obviously was living in LA and all my symptoms kind of hit me at once.
And what were those symptoms?
I had gained 30 pounds in 3 months, so gained weight pretty quick. My hair was pretty much falling out. I hadn't had a period in 3 months, but it took me 3 months to even realize oh my gosh, I haven't had a period. Mm-hmm. I was so busy that I kind of put my health on the back burner. I just didn't really make it a priority. I had hormonal acne all along my jawline. Fatigue 24/7. I felt like my body was moving in slow motion. It took me so much energy to do the smallest tasks. And I was just really sad. I wasn't myself. I'm a very bubbly, fun-loving person. And that energy just wasn't there. And I think for me, that was I know that these symptoms had gradually come over time, and I just I wasn't paying attention, and I wish that I would have been. And so it kind of felt like they all hit me at once. And it was
How old were you at this point?
At this point, I was 22, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you had the ovarian cyst rupture, you were how old?
That was a year before.
So a year before. Is that normal with PCOS to have cysts on your ovarian?
No.
Ovaries?
And the one thing that concerns me about you, if you were my patient, I would just ask you a bunch of questions right now.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Tell me about your periods before and now. I know they were irregular, but also do you get bloating with it? Do you get pain?
Oh, yeah. I was having a ton of, now my periods are regular.
But back then,
I didn't have a period for 3 months.
I know, but back then when you would get your period 0 to 10, how painful were your periods?
Oh, extremely painful.
Yeah.
Extremely
and right
painful.
now when you get your period, how painful are they?
I would say within the first few hours, I have a little bit of pain, but it is not anything near what it used to be.
How did you get diagnosed? Because 90% of PCOS patients go undiagnosed.
Yeah.
I want to know who this angel of a doctor was who diagnosed you.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I had seen a lot of different doctors.
Yeah.
So after I woke up and was just I felt completely out of control of my health. I was like, I'm going to take care of this. I know there's something that's not right. I went to so many different doctors and I felt like I was not being heard. These symptoms were something that I felt like doctors were just kind of checking off as this is just part of what happens at this age,
So what were they telling you that it was?
They were just telling me, you sound very stressed. It's very normal for your body to go through these changes at this age, recommending birth control, potentially metformin, spironolactone. And, it wasn't the fact that I was anti-birth control or anything like that. I think birth control has its place, but my body did not respond well to birth control in the past. I was only on it for a total of 2 years, and that was in high school. And I just knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. But I went to several different doctors. I did not feel like I was being listened to. And then hormones were never part of the conversation. PCOS was never part of the conversation. I didn't even know what PCOS was,
right. Very few people do.
So then I went to a friend who recommended a gynecologist, and I went to go see her. And she said, I'm just going to give you an ultrasound and take a look and see. So she gave me an ultrasound, and I didn't really know, what I was looking at. But she kind of turned to me and said, you have cysts on your ovaries. And it kind of looked like, she explained it pearls, wrapped around, my ovaries, and they were enlarged, 4 times the size of what they were supposed to be. And I just started crying because it was almost like I was relieved, because I knew that deep down that there was something wrong. And previously these doctors just didn't even want to take the time to give me an exam or, even bring hormones into the conversation. So part of me was relieved and part of me was just really nervous because...
What does that mean?
Exactly. What does this mean for me? What does it mean for my fertility? What does it mean for, the changes that my body's going to go through? How am I going to deal with this in the future? And so from that moment forward, at the time, I just wanted to make my whole priority just healing.
Yeah.
So I moved back home and I found an integrative medicine doctor, and that's when we came up with a plan of how I was going to heal. And we started with blood work so that I wasn't taking supplements that I didn't need, because I think that's a huge issue. I think people take things because they work for other people. So, for me, getting that blood work, having answers based off of my own body type and having a plan of hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on changing my exercise. I'm going to make changes in my nutrition. I'm going to change my lifestyle, and I'm going to take control of my health and not let my hormones, run my life.
Run your life.
Yeah.
And what were some of the things that you did right away?
Yeah. So right away, after I got all my blood work done, I found out that I also had a variety of gut health issues. Mm-hmm. And the great thing...
What were they?
Yeah. So I had candida overgrowth and leaky gut.
Yeah.
So the good thing is that the changes that I was making for my PCOS and my nutrition also benefited the changes for my gut health. So things like reducing my intake of refined sugar, removing gluten and dairy. Nutrition was where I started. Mm-hmm. And at first I was just oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to enjoy any food. Yeah. I have to cut out everything. And it just felt like I had to make so many changes. But then I started experimenting with recipes and just finding ways to make these foods delicious and finding alternatives like maple syrup or coconut sugar or honey instead of, having sugar. And then, like I said, removing gluten and dairy. And then exercise was such a big thing. The conversations that I had with doctors, prior to getting diagnosed were maybe if you're gaining weight, maybe you should exercise more, just reduce your portion sizes. All these things that I was being told that, once I realized the changes that I did need to make, I was just like so frustrated that that was the advice that I was given. So at the time when I'd gained all this weight, I was like, I need to be doing, 2 workouts a day. I'd gained 30 pounds and I was just like, I need to work hard. I need to work harder.
Yeah.
Spiking, my cortisol, putting my body under so much stress. It was causing so much inflammation. So what I decided to do for the changes in my exercise was just move to all low impact workouts. And so I started walking. I started going to hot yoga. I started focusing on strength training. And it was like, I was working out for months and just gaining weight prior to this. And then when I made these changes, my inflammation started to go down. My muscles started to look a little bit more toned. I felt better. I was more energized after my workouts, and I was looking forward to my exercises, not dreading them. So in terms of nutrition and exercise, those are the 2 big changes that I made. And then for my lifestyle, and I don't think other women realize this, stress is so big.
It's the cause of so many diseases.
Factor, but when you're in that fight or flight mode, you really don't realize how stressed you are until you feel what it feels like to not be stressed. And it's oh my gosh.
Did you notice, okay, so you gained 30 pounds and on your little teeny frame, that is a lot.
It was a lot.
Did the weight start coming off right away? Did it?
Yeah. So, I went through, I want to say about a year of trial and error. Okay. So that was me trying all these things that I thought were going to work. This was I ran to Google first. It was like, what should I be doing? So a year of trial and error of really not seeing any change. And then once I implemented those changes that I worked on with my integrative medicine doctor, I started seeing results within 2 to 3 months. But the thing that I always tell women who are wanting to heal naturally is that it takes time,
It's not.
And I think for me, what I really wanted to do was make sure that these changes I was making were things that I could maintain. And I wanted to make it enjoyable. And these are things that I share on my platform because I think wellness and these lifestyle changes and all this, it can be so overwhelming,
There's so many people telling you so many different things.
Yeah. It's how can I simplify this? How can I make it fun? And, how can I lower my stress? How can I make these changes with it being something that I can maintain? That way my progress is there, when it's not something where I feel better for a month and then I gain the weight back. But 30 pounds was a lot on my frame and it really did take a toll.
How long did it take you to get to what you think is your normal weight?
About 2 years. Yeah. With counting that year of trial and error. Yeah. It took me a while. It wasn't something that happened overnight. It wasn't a 2-month process. But now, I feel so good. I've been able to maintain it for years. And I feel like I live an 80-20, lifestyle in terms of I have added all those things back into my nutrition. So I can have dairy, I can have gluten, I can have a little bit of sugar. And that's the best part of my wellness journey is that I was able to, bring those things back in. And it wasn't a change that I had to make for the rest of my life.
But why, if you had to cut them out and that's what was causing inflammation, why wouldn't it make you inflamed again to add them back?
Yeah. So I think at the time, because it had been, what we don't realize is it's years of your body having these things. And sometimes when your body's in fight or flight, I feel like, stress can even make you digest food differently. Right. So I added them in a very small increments. It wasn't like I started crushing a cheese pizza every single night. Right. And now I feel like I have systems in place to where if I am going to have a cheese pizza or some ice cream, I know, what I need to do to make sure I feel good the next day.
And so what are those things that you need to do if you're going to add those things back?
Yeah, usually it's taking digestive enzymes, making sure I'm really hydrated. If I want to do a lymphatic drainage massage on my stomach, do a little legs up the wall meditation just to help with, inflammation. But I just feel like there's so many little tips and tricks that I've learned that make me feel good, but also I get to, enjoy the things that I love.
We talked about PCOS and I'm so happy to learn about the, sort of a natural way of doing it too. We're actually creating a supplement that's going to be for people that don't want to take medicine. So it's going to have some of the benefits that, metformin, spironolactone, all the ones that you said. But there are people that don't want to take medicine because of the side effects or for whatever reason or because of their age. So I think that this is amazing, your platform.
But I also don't want to give the wrong message to PCOS patients out there who are listening to her. PCOS is a large spectrum, right? Like so any other condition.
PCOS,
And one thing we know for a fact is PCOS patients have insulin resistance. They are capable of gaining 30 pounds in 3 months. It's possible. The problem is this affects, first of all, 15% of women. 90% of them go undiagnosed. We talked about this. And because insulin resistance is the main underlying condition, That needs to be addressed first. There are women just like yourself who, with changing their lifestyle, diet, and exercise, can completely reverse that. There's some women who can halfway reverse it, and there's some patients who really have a hard time. And it's important to look at PCOS. It affects different organs. It affects your mood. PCOS patients usually suffer from anxiety and depression. In their life, they give you a history of anxiety or depression. And for patients who can't deal with that mood disorder, sometimes it's harder for them to pick themselves up to do exactly what you did. Our first approach with PCOS is always diet, exercise. It's an inflammatory process. You have to bring down inflammation in your body. But there are people out there that do all this, and their insulin resistance is so extreme. Their symptoms are so extreme that without medication, it's hard to control their symptoms. These are patients who need to lose 200 pounds, and they have their faces covered by acne. And diet and exercise doesn't always work for them. So if you're listening, what you're saying should be the basis for every single woman with polycystic ovarian syndrome. But if this fails, we have medication that
are great.
Is absolutely life-changing for these patients.
And I think sometimes women are told that have PCOS, just diet and exercise. Just diet and exercise, and it's going to be fine. Change your diet and exercise.
Eat less.
That's what I was told. It was reduce your portion sizes. How much food are you eating? And if you're gaining weight, make sure you're getting in plenty of exercise. And I was just like,
how could I possibly eat less?
I would go into
2 hours a day.
Exactly. I would go into these appointments, obviously not feeling very hopeful. And nobody can prepare you for that feeling, leaving a doctor's appointment and feeling like you weren't listened to and feeling like, the advice that you're given is just this is not going to work for me.
And the one thing, you said it too, every single PCOS patient who gets diagnosed says the same thing. They immediately say, I feel validated. Because for years, people make you feel crazy. You think you're crazy, right? You're like, well, I'm doing everything my friend is doing. She looks like a stick. Her skin is clear. She has no hair loss. I'm eating the same portions. I'm exercising more than her, but I'm not getting the same results. That's insulin resistance. That's having an underlying condition that needs to be addressed differently.
We hear this all the time that girls and women with PCOS are told, you just need to lose weight, stop eating and exercise more. But that's not the problem. The problem is insulin resistance. So Thais, can you tell us what insulin resistance is? And then I would love to hear from you what you did specifically for your insulin resistance.
And let me tell you, it's absolutely correct. And a lot of these women, when you take a good history, they either have family history of diabetes or they have family members who are overweight. Insulin resistance, during pregnancy, they had gestational diabetes. There's some part of their history that points to insulin resistance, family history of it. So insulin resistance, the most simple way of describing it, when we eat carbohydrates or sugar, our body breaks it down into glucose, right? Once we have glucose in our blood, our pancreas releases a hormone called insulin. The job of insulin is it opens up receptors on the surface of our cells. It grabs the sugar and pushes the sugar into the cell where it turns into energy. This is what's supposed to happen, right? This is what happens in you, Mary Alice, when you have your cake, because you don't know what insulin resistance
or my hot
tamales. So for the rest of us, I'm insulin resistant. And by the way, not all insulin resistant women have PCOS. I'm insulin resistant, but I don't have PCOS. But I still have the same underlying condition. What does that mean? When I eat sugar or carbohydrates and my body breaks it down into glucose, glucose stimulates my pancreas to release insulin. But genetically, I'm insulin resistant. These cells are not responding to insulin, so sugar is not going into the cell to turn into energy. Sugar bounces in the blood and pushes your insulin up. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. It's a hormone that you don't want to go up in your body, right? So as your insulin goes up, your body takes the sugar from your blood and stores it as fat. That's the simplest way of describing insulin resistance. medications like metformin or the supplements that, we've been working on for the past year make women more insulin sensitive, right? So they reverse that insulin resistance. And that's how the sugar goes in, insulin goes down. As your insulin goes down, your body doesn't store fat. And in case of PCOS patients, when insulin is high, insulin stimulates your ovaries to secrete androgens like testosterone. It is that testosterone that makes your periods irregular, gives you acne, male pattern hair loss, facial hair, body hair, right? So by making someone insulin sensitive and clearing the sugar out of the blood and lowering that insulin, what happens is you lower the androgens. So the periods start becoming more regular. All the symptoms of testosterone goes away. That's why diet and exercise is so important. I don't know if you have a diabetic family member, but usually we tell diabetics after you eat, go for a walk. Why? Because when you exercise, you open up these receptors and you pull the sugar into the cell, right? That's why it's so important for diabetics to exercise. So, or why do we give them metformin? To increase their insulin sensitivity and lower their insulin resistance. So all of this together, the low sugar diet, the exercise, using supplements that will make you insulin sensitive or medications that will clear that sugar out of the blood will help patients, resolve their symptoms.
So what did you do for your, insulin resistance?
Yeah, I think the lifestyle changes. I think there's a lot of things that go hand in hand with helping insulin resistance. But for me, nutrition-wise, I think increasing my protein intake was huge, especially first thing in the morning. So beforehand, I was having like a smoothie with all kinds of berries and bananas, sugar, right? So what was happening to my insulin? Right in the morning, it was getting shot through the roof. And so for me though, and if you look up a healthy breakfast, smoothie's a great breakfast,
Fruit.
So fruit, yeah. But for me, no, it was not. So swapping that for something like, and I don't really have a ton of eggs anymore either because that was one of my sensitivities, but chicken, sausage, veggies, omega-3, so like an avocado. Put some quinoa in there to get my fiber in. Having that balanced breakfast and swapping like a smoothie for, that high protein, nourishing breakfast was huge for me.
So important.
And that simple change first thing in the morning. And then just in general, reducing my intake of refined sugar. And, at first I thought, I'm not going to be able to, I love my sweets. I get it from my mom. Like she wakes up and she drives to McDonald's and goes to get like a chocolate chip cookie. Like that's just like Diet Coke and chocolate chip cookie.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And she's literally built like this. I'm like, how? But no, and I think that was, something that made a really big difference for me. So I actually, ended up writing out these recipes and I started sharing them online because I wanted to show people that you can make these foods, whether it's sweetened with coconut sugar or honey or maple syrup or agave, really delicious and you can still enjoy sweet things. And so I ended up writing a cookbook called Cooking Up Wellness with one of my friends. And, I just wanted to share all these recipes. So changing my nutrition, starting with protein, going on those walks because I cut out that high impact workout. I think those are things that really, really helped with my insulin resistance.
And I think one important thing is stress. When you're stressed, your cortisol is up. What does cortisol do? Release sugar in your blood.
I also think reducing my caffeine intake helped as well. But I was drinking a lot of coffee.
Think about that. Think about you at that time in your life. You're young. Like you said, you're out till 3 a.m. All of a sudden, you gain 30 pounds in 3 months. You can't figure out why. You're exercising like crazy to get up. Yeah. Your stress is, of course, you're just like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's wrong with me. That's going to make you so stressed. And that's what I hear these stories that Thais says. These, people come into her office.
Every single patient.
Yeah. We talk a lot about fertility and PCOS. And Thais always says that she wishes every single girl who has a painful period, she could get into her office to do an egg count because many of them won't have eggs by the time it is for them to have children. So
it's true. So I want you to listen to this, okay? Because do you have a partner?
Yes.
Okay, good. That makes me happy when people have partners because I don't have to worry about fertility as much. But PCOS patients, just like when your doctor did an ultrasound, I want to make sure people understand that polycystic does not mean you have cysts on your ovaries.
Right. And also, I think a lot of women think that you have to have cysts in order to have PCOS.
Bravo.
Yes.
So
and you don't.
20% of PCOS patients have normal looking ovaries and 20% of normal patients have PCOS looking ovaries.
Yes.
But I want to start by saying polycystic doesn't mean cyst on the ovary. It should be polyfollicular ovarian syndrome. So that name needs to be changed because it throws people off. PCOS patients, generally speaking, have a lot of eggs. So when you do an egg count, the egg count is really high, right? That's one way sometimes we diagnose a PCOS patient. At age 33, their AMH is 12, which is crazy
so
high.
Interesting because you would think it would be the reverse of that.
And tell everybody what the AMH is, just so
Anti-Mullerian hormone. It's a hormone that gets released by the follicles. The more follicles you have, the higher your AMH. As a general rule, every 0.1 of AMH is one egg. So if your AMH is 1, that means you have about 10 follicles and they can probably pull 10 eggs out during egg freezing. If that AMH is 2.0, that means you have about 20 eggs. So that's how we calculate in our head. When it comes to egg freezing and PCOS, what I always tell my patients is that PCOS patients have a lot of eggs, which is great, but the quality of the egg goes down significantly after age 30. So if you don't want to have children and you want to wait until your late 30s, you better either freeze eggs or if you have a partner, freeze embryos. We like to freeze embryos because we know once we freeze embryos what the quality of those embryos are. By freezing eggs, we just know how many eggs we can freeze. Otherwise, we can't comment about the quality of it and how many embryos we can make from those eggs. Generally speaking, just to give you an idea, around age 30, you need maybe 3 to 5 eggs to make one embryo. At age 40, you need 10 eggs to make one embryo. So that's why it's so important to freeze it sooner than later. For patients, like if you were my patient and you would say, I want to have children in the next 3 years, I would do your egg count, make sure that egg count is normal, and I would just follow it once a year. But if you didn't have a partner, I would start talking about egg freezing at age 27, 28, because definitely by 32, I want those eggs frozen. I had a conversation once with a fertility doctor and I said, when do you tell your patients to freeze their eggs, patients with PCOS? He said, by 35. I'm like, what if your daughter had PCOS? He said, 28. I'm like, so why would you treat your patients any different?
Yeah.
He's like, well, because I'm paranoid. Well, I'm paranoid with every single patient of mine. So I start at least talking to them about egg freezing at 28. If they can't afford it, I just keep checking it every year.
But if you're checking it, you're checking for the amount of eggs. You can't check for the quality.
You can't.
So what do you do?
But at least I check to make sure the count doesn't go down.
Is there a way to test the quality?
No, unfortunately. I mean, we can tell how many eggs, we freeze and, we're able to freeze. But until we go to make embryos, we won't be able to tell you that. So if I had the option of freezing embryos, I would tell my patients to freeze embryos. Generally speaking, I want 20 frozen eggs if you don't have a partner in your life.
Does insurance cover egg freezing for PCOS patients?
No. Oh my God. Insurance doesn't cover your MRI if you're high risk for breast cancer. You want them to pay for your egg freezing?
Well, so what do these people do that can't afford
that's
this?
the problem, right? When you're young and you don't have money and you have good eggs, you can't freeze them. When you're old and your eggs are old and you have money, nobody wants your eggs. So that's the problem. And this is a serious problem. If you work for these big companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, they do pay for you to freeze your eggs, which is amazing. But that's so rare. Once a year, I have a patient whose egg freezing is covered. But there's one more thing I want you to listen to. A large number of PCOS patients have endometriosis, a large number of them. And the problem with endometriosis is there's no blood test. And these patients might have symptoms and some don't. The most common symptom of endometriosis is painful period. When you tell me I had really painful period and I went to the doctor and I had ruptured cysts, the first thing in my head is this woman has endometriosis. And I'll tell you why. Endometriosis is when the cells inside the uterus are outside of the uterus. And once a month when your ovaries are stimulating the lining, of the uterus, these cells that are similar to your endometrial cells also get stimulated. And when we don't get pregnant and our lining breaks down and comes out as a period, these cells also bleed, but they're bleeding outside of the uterus. Sometimes we see, like sometimes when I scope endometriosis patients, there's blood in their pelvis. It could also come from retrograde bleeding from the uterus into the tube, into the pelvis. And these cells start implanting in the pelvis. So it is important for patients with PCOS to make sure they don't have endometriosis. If you have painful periods, you don't want to ignore it because they almost go hand in hand, right? And endometriosis patients always suffer from leaky gut, which is SIBO, right? Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So all of these are connected. Why is it important? Sometimes I have PCOS patients, I told you they have a lot of eggs, but the quality goes down after 30. Endometriosis can lower your count and your quality. So depending on which one is stronger and how many eggs you start with and how aggressive your endometriosis is, your egg count might end up at different places. You might have a PCOS patient at age 30 who has no eggs because the endometriosis destroyed it. So that's why it's so important
How
to
do you test for endometriosis?
Clinical diagnosis, you listen. Usually these are patients who end up in the ER because they have fluid in their pelvis. They get diagnosed with ruptured cyst. It's not a ruptured cyst. It's probably blood from endometriosis. And usually they give you history of bloating. Some patients give you history of bladder symptoms. Different people present differently. Sometimes pain with deep penetration during sex. Sometimes bloating. Painful period, obviously, is the most common. Recurrent UTIs. There are patients who come and say, I keep getting bladder infections, but you check their culture and they're negative. That's a red flag. But generally speaking, when I see a PCOS patient, in my head, the first thing I say is, am I missing endometriosis in her? So instead of doubting it, check an egg count. I'm okay if you don't have any symptoms, but as long as you give me a normal egg count and that egg count doesn't start shooting down, because if it shoots down, then there's endometriosis in there.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's great to hear. How do you treat endometriosis?
Endometriosis, well, it depends on patient's symptoms. Someone like her, if she has that's why I keep asking you, are you sure you don't have painful periods?
Because I don't have painful periods.
Good. Yeah. That's amazing. And remember, not all PCOS patients have endometriosis, but you just have to make sure you put a check in front of it so you don't miss it in someone, because the price tag these patients pay is so high, so high. I had a patient this afternoon, my last patient before I came here, 33, she didn't give any history of really painful periods, maybe 4 out of 10, which is considered okay, right? It's not painful, 4 out of 10, but that's also relative. But her egg count was 0.03.
What does that mean?
0.1 is 1 egg. So this woman is 0.03. So not even 1 egg in both ovaries. At 33, she just got married. So, and I go in this room and I'm telling myself, like, why didn't someone check an egg count on her? It's a simple
it's easy
blood
to check.
test.
It's
simple. Covered by insurance.
Yeah.
Have you had your egg count tested?
Yeah, I have.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
She's a good girl.
I'm going to come to you if I want to get them frozen. I'm going to come to you.
No, don't come to me. Go to a fertility doctor. But make sure, that egg count, if you're listening, if you have painful periods, if you think you have symptoms of polycystic ovarian syndrome, not only you need to fix the symptoms of PCOS, the fertility portion of it is very important. Freeze your eggs, or at least start talking to your doctor about egg freezing anywhere between 28 to 32, obviously, if you can afford it. If that egg count is low, I've sent 18-year-olds for egg freezing with endometriosis.
Why do you think it's not a topic that's brought up more often?
Because it's women's health. Because women don't talk about it.
We're going to talk about it.
Because I've done this for years and years and years. This is not something new. That's what breaks my heart. I went into this room this afternoon. That's all I see. I don't see normal annual patients. I see PCOS, endometriosis, breast cancer. That's all I see in my office. Or I see cases that other doctors can't figure out. And I promise you, almost all of them are either PCOS or endometriosis. And I was really heartbroken for this patient. She said, since I was a little girl, that was my dream, to have my own children. And, it's heartbreaking. It really is. If men had this issue, if men had an endometriosis condition that destroyed their egg count and quality, what do you think would have happened if a doctor like me missed it?
Hell would have.
I know. I said it would be a national emergency.
Yeah.
It would be a national emergency.
All
I
hell
would
would
have
break
been
loose.
on CNN.
Yeah.
Fun. Can I ask you guys a question then for both of you? Because you're an expert and you're an expert in different ways. Is there anything you can do to make your egg quality better?
No, see, we're born with a certain number of eggs. And
That's the number, but what about the quality?
yes, lifestyle, as she was explaining to you, weight loss, exercise, don't smoke. Smoking affects your egg count.
It does.
Alcohol, of course, anytime you live a healthy lifestyle, you're not stressed, you're not smoking, you're not drinking alcohol, you're not progressing the destruction of these eggs. But sometimes patients like herself might do everything right.
Yeah.
I did everything right and I got breast cancer.
Right.
So sometimes you just do it all right and you still pay for it.
And so you're with a partner now.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about him.
He's great. Yeah, he's so supportive, and he loves wellness as well. So
Okay, great.
He's very active. So it's funny because I've taught him a little bit about cooking, and that's something that we like to do together. So we'll cook in the evenings, and then he kind of got me more into running, which is something I was initially nervous about because I hadn't done any high impact workouts, and my body responded just fine. So
You're in such good shape right now. You can do anything.
You're glowing. I mean,
thank
you
you so
are.
much.
You just look like the amazing,
thank you.
Poster child
child
Oh
for
my
good
gosh.
health.
Oh, you guys are making me blush. But I feel like having, and he wasn't with me, when I was going through this, but he's asked all about it. He knows everything. And he was really great when I was explaining to him, how I was diagnosed and why I made the changes that I made. And I think having that support and having somebody that can understand, whether it's a partner or your family, it lowers the stress and it makes the process easier. And I know not everybody has that because you can't always choose, your family or how they're going to respond. But I think having that support system is just so incredible. So I feel very blessed.
I just want to add one more thing, you guys, because she's so young. And when she was struggling with all this, she was in her, in her
Early 20s.
Early 20s, right?
Yeah.
A lot of young teenagers who suffer from an eating disorder do have PCOS that's undiagnosed. And I want to make that very clear because that frustration, you were able to get a hold of your situation and start exercising and changing your diet and lowering your stress and reversing all the symptoms. Not many women are capable of doing that. That takes a lot of effort. As you said, 2 years is a long time.
It is.
And I just want for parents listening to this, if
For
you're
young
girls listening to this, if you feel like you're eating exactly what your friends are eating, but you're gaining weight, you have acne, your periods are irregular, you're tired, you're depressed, like I talked to you about it, PCOS patients have mood disorder and they have insulin resistance. Yeah. So they already are predisposed to anxiety and depression and they start gaining weight. You put the two together, what is it?
Combo.
It equals eating disorder. Yeah. And that's why it's so important. I always tell Mary Alice, I want to get to the first lady. I don't care which first lady. I want one first lady to grab the mic and say, here are symptoms of PCOS and endometriosis.
Well, I think that's
I'm going to sign your petition and I will join that cause.
And that I have to because I don't have a voice. Do you know what I'm
You do. This podcast.
We're starting.
Yeah.
But that's why we have people like you on it because you do have a voice and young girls do see you and they listen to you. And what you're doing is so important.
Oh, thank you so much.
Your message is so important. And it's why we started creating this new supplement that we can't talk about yet. It's not ready yet, but taking her years and years and years of being a PCOS expert and with the medications, thinking, as a mom, maybe I don't want to give my daughter medication. So let's try to fix something
It'll be a game changer
that
PCOS
works
patients.
for somebody in a more natural way. So that's the hope. But I don't know. I'm very inspired by you. And I think
thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your story. Every single woman who shares her story helps at least a few around her, and you have millions of followers.
Yeah.
So, by sharing your story, you bring so much awareness, so much. I have, even with our Lifetime Risk of Breast Cancer podcast, I have nurses from Cedars, random people texting me, this is my lifetime risk. What do I do? Oh my God, I didn't know. I got one this morning, 63% lifetime risk. What do I do? So
have you done your lifetime risk?
Not yet.
Oh, you're going to do it right after this podcast.
I will.
Let me tell you what's about to happen for you, my friend.
So
we're going to make sure you know your lifetime risk of breast cancer.
My point is, by sharing your story, you will make a difference. So I appreciate, as a, PCOS has been my passion for 20 years. And I love and adore my PCOS and endometriosis patients because I know this struggle they go through. Yeah. So I just love them so much. And, I feel like I was given this position to just bring awareness and take this knowledge to all these little girls who are having an eating disorder, are suffering from PCOS, are getting dismissed by their doctors. 90% of PCOS patients are not diagnosed in their lifetime.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It was very hard for me to be vulnerable at first, when I made the decision that I wanted to just tell my story. And I think, I started showing photos of what that weight gain looked like. I showed my acne, and I didn't take very many photos at that time because obviously it's not a moment that I wanted to capture. So I shared the same photos. But I'll never forget, after I posted, the first video, kind of going into detail about my symptoms and how I was able to heal naturally, I started getting all these messages of just women being like, I feel the same way. So I think the big thing for me is women understanding that, one, you're not alone. Two, how important it is to be your own advocate. It gives you so much power, how to educate yourself if somebody's not going to be there to educate you, whether it's, following people that share their experience, whether it's coming to see doctors that actually listen and care about their patients like you. And I think, same as you, sharing that and having that voice and being that person where people can just hear, like my experience and the messages that I get. It's like, I can't even tell you how fulfilling it is, when I see people saying, I implemented, the changes that you've made are because of you. I know what questions to ask my doctor. Right. And, social media is a crazy thing. I know you guys both have been doing it for years, and there's a lot of ups and downs. No, you guys are thriving. But, my community they're so great, and I feel so blessed. And every time I get messages about, women just feeling empowered, or even if it's like a recipe that they tried that they love and they made it for their kids, like, it almost brings me to tears. So I just feel so fulfilled and so blessed to be able to speak about, the things that I do.
Amazing? That's how doctors feel every single night. I always tell my children.
I can't imagine how you feel. If I feel that way from sharing just like my experience of recipes, I can't imagine how you feel. Yeah.
Okay, we end every podcast with the top 5 tips. So for every woman, little girl listening, can you give us top 5 tips? It could be for PCOS that's worked for you. It could just be for your life. It could be things that you love. It could be anything.
Of course. Okay. So for PCOS, or just lifestyle changes that you can make, I would say really prioritize protein and try to reduce your intake of refined sugar. Reduce your intake of alcohol. I think those are all things, super easy things that you can do that are going to help. I think when it comes to exercise, remember that less can be more. You don't need to over-exercise. You don't need to be trying to burn 2,000 calories. Yeah. Go for your walks. Try to slow down. Focus on stress management, whether it's taking magnesium in the evening, whether it's having a really great wind-down routine. Find ways to ritualize your routine and make it fun. And then I would say, also, rely on discipline and not motivation. So when you're making these changes, motivation is not something that is you're not always going to have it. 90% of the time, I'm not motivated to go work out or make that healthy meal. You have to be disciplined, and when you have discipline, you have control over your life. So have discipline, and then also be patient. If you're healing naturally or, making these changes, you're not going to lose the weight overnight. You may not get clear skin overnight. But the thing that I would tell myself is that there is nothing bad that can come from like these changes that I'm making. And if it takes time, it's going to take time. But I know when I get to the other side, I'm going to feel so good. So
bravo. Those were so
amazing.
Good.
Thank you. And give yourself grace. Give yourself grace.
Yeah. I think that's
amazing.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for coming.
If you want to own your own health, follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so that you can never miss an episode.
For takeaways from today's show, visit shemdpodcast.com. Thanks so much for joining us today on SHEMD.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for a physician's medical advice. You should regularly consult your medical provider in matters relating to your own health. Even though we share our honest beliefs on SHEMD, some of the products and services we discuss may involve sponsorships or paid advertising.